Good evening, everyone. I just had some news there from Utah that Charlie Kirk had been shot at a presentation he was giving at Utah University. I've seen the video, and it does appear to be accurate. The reports we're getting is that he is in hospital, still alive, one man in custody. The world we live in. What can you say? What can you say? Right. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Sound 5x5? Better than last night? You all there still? Yeah? Yeah. Good. Yeah, pretty shocking, but maybe not unexpected, I don't know. Just always seems to be the left that takes the bad things. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good, bro. Thank you, Robin. Yep. We will crack on then with tonight's show as normal. No doubt we'll cover this on Friday and we'll know more about it. Because, you know, the worst thing, and I might sound like a government stooge, but speculation at this point doesn't do anyone any favours. Let's wait and see until we've got some evidence, shall we? Right. Who we got tonight? Shalini, Vaughn, Espresso Mechanic, Robin, Beats and Types, yo. Yeah. So let's crack on with tonight then, and we'll go. As always, disclaimer for YouTube: this is an evidence-based channel. All the information that you're going to hear tonight is based on actual factual data that has been gathered from various sources, not least the actual government and the police. So we shall be reporting facts and figures that are generally accepted. Whether you want to believe them or not is up to you, but the whole thing is evidence-based, and there may be some speculation, but if there is, I'll point it out. I try and take a balanced view. I try and weigh up the pros and cons before I make up my own mind. And that's the kind of thing that you guys should be doing as well. Don't just jump on bandwagons. It doesn't do anyone any favours, least of all yourself. So, right, welcome to another edition of Sergeant Grumpy Investigates, where we dig into the evidence and separate the wheat from the bullshit. Before we dive into today's absolute clusterfuck of a topic, good God, let me remind you why you should listen to me instead of some keyboard warrior on Twitter. 20 years. I took an oath. I wore the uniform. I spent my time on the street. I retired early due to an injury. And then I spent another 10 years working with and for the police at the highest levels, from Chief Constable down. So I started as a naive constable who actually believed that we were there to catch the bad guys. I really did. And protect the public. I rose through the ranks to sergeant. Well, only one, but even so, I was an early sergeant. I only had 9 years service when I got promoted. And let me tell you something, what I'm about to show you tonight would, in my view, have been completely unthinkable when I started. So, remember, if you're chatting, you can let me know that you're here. People in the vertical chat, you need to be a subscriber to the channel to chat, but there's no time bar. You can chat straight away. So if you subscribe, boom, you can get straight on. And let me know where you're from. We had a cracking group of people from all over the world on Friday night, and I'm hoping we can maybe replicate that again this Friday. Right, you might even get personal stories tonight. Right, Tonight I'm going to prove to you with cold, hard government statistics that British police have abandoned fighting real crime to become the thought police. Simple as that. The numbers are just completely and utterly shocking. You'll think that we were making them up if you didn't know me better. But I'm not, and you know I'm not. Because everything I show you comes straight from official government sources. I was going to run a poll. I don't think there's any point. The poll was going to be, what do you think gets you arrested faster in modern Britain? Housebreaking? Calling someone a Muppet on social media? Actual violent crime? Or tweeting something the government doesn't like? Going to be a close call between B and D, isn't it? Right, before we go any further, how many people do you think get arrested for posting something online every day in the UK? Go on, give me a number. Throw some numbers out there if you can. 10? 20? 4? It's Robin's been 100. You guys are worse than ever. Good grief, no, it's 33 a day. 33. There's a good number. 33. Thank you, Ray. Someone with some sense. 33 a day. Now, this is based on 2023's 1200 and change figure. So it's probably actually gone up slightly since. But at the moment, the accepted figure is 33 a day. That's a lot when you consider Russia only arrested 400 people in a year. Now, the thing to bear in mind, though, is of those 33 people, less than one of them gets convicted. So, the police are doing something completely wrong. Because if these people aren't getting convicted, why the fuck are they getting arrested? Completely wrong. Right, so, and as I said, as someone who has spent 2 decades actually investigating real crimes, let's put this in perspective for you. In 2023, police made 12,183 arrests under communications legislation. That's more than one arrest every hour of every day just for social media posts. Meanwhile, and this is where it gets really mad, they solved just 11.3% of traditional crimes. 11%. The crime clear-up rate in Japan is in the region of 96 to 98%. But that's another story. That's another story completely. So if I'd been given a stack of cases to look at, crime reports, and I only solved 1 in 10 cases, if the CID only solved 1 in 10 cases, we'd have been hauled over the coals. I mean, what the hell are you doing with your time? But apparently, arresting people for hurt feelings on Twitter now is more important than catching actual criminals. Would you rather live in a world where people caught burglars or where they arrest comedians? Because apparently, it doesn't seem that the police can do both. I mean, look, I've been in countless situations where real crimes need solving. Domestic violence, housebreaking, fraud, assault. Cases where actual victims needed justice. And I can tell you, not once did a victim ever say, "Officer, forget about catching the person who broke into my house. Can you please arrest someone who made a joke on Facebook?" In fact, I should have said, "Officer, forget about catching the person who broke into my house and shat in my carpet. Can you please arrest someone who made a joke on Facebook?" Because that's effectively seems to be what's happening these days. And burglars and housebreakers do that kind of thing, I think, because of the stress of the moment. I don't think it's a conscious choice, but you'd be amazed at how often it occurs. And here's a helpful safety tip. If you ever get your house broken into and ransacked, never use that toothbrush again. Never. Just take my word on it. Do not do it. Right, so let's look at a case that perfectly encapsulates this madness. There's a video that went viral recently. A man in Hull gets arrested. His crime, allegedly calling someone a Muppet. So a Muppet, Kermit the Frog would be spinning on his hand, wouldn't he? Well, at this moment in time, I can see that you're maybe thinking, well, you know, that's probably not right, or it's been manipulated, but it actually happened. Okay, the video was from 2022. It was in Hull. It was a real arrest. It was real officers, real handcuffs for the word Muppet. He called someone a Muppet, or he described someone as a Muppet, and they took offence. Now, the charges were eventually dropped because even the custody sergeant thought it was ridiculous. But think about this logically with me for a minute. How many officers responded to this Muppet emergency? Well, there'd be at least 2, that laid hands on the guy and brought him in. And then there's all the other people that were involved, custody sergeant, the people that had to process him, the people that had to release him, the inspector that had to make the decision probably to go, well, let's go. And then the justice system, let's just drop all these charges, but there'll still be a report going up. So how much did that cost? Thousands probably. In real terms, thousands. So how many actual crimes went unsolved while they were dealing with hurt feelings over Sesame Street characters? What's the worst thing you've been called online? You could probably get people locked up now. You probably could, yeah. Crazy, yeah. And this is the stuff that kind of winds me up. And when I was investigating real crimes, we had something called proportionality. We had initiative. The response has to match the severity of the offence. Even if a Ned's going to call you a Muppet, you're probably going to let it go. And Scottish police let a lot less go than the English do. Don't swear at a Scottish cop, you're likely to get jailed straight away. But you still had a degree of proportionality. You weren't going to lock up people for just being silly, dancing about the street or something like that. You'd just say, you tone it down, mate. Keep the noise down. People are trying to sleep. Wouldn't you? You'd think. You don't send armed police to a parking ticket, do you? You don't launch a murder investigation for a missing cat. You sure as hell don't arrest people for using words that wouldn't get you thrown out of a pub. But apparently calling someone a Muppet now requires the same response as actual criminal behaviour. What's next? SWAT teams for people who use Comic Sans? Yeah. Right. And it gets a bit sinister around the legislative weaponising that they're doing, doesn't it? See, crimes don't happen in a vacuum. There's always a method, always a plan, there's always a kind of pattern. And when I was working, we'd look for patterns, even in the traffic. I mean, one week I got to, one week I did what the other sergeants wouldn't do on the night shift. I took the shift and we went out and we went looking for bad guys instead of speeders. Because speeders are easy when you're in the traffic. But on the night shift, what's the point? There's no traffic. So you'll get 1 or 2 speeders who aren't bothering anyone. There's nobody on the streets. There's nobody else driving about. Place is empty. It's not London, people. It's not London. So we'd go out looking for real bad guys. And I managed to, we didn't have an inspector on the shift at this point. So I went out with the guys and I split them all up and I arranged with the division to get a cop for each of the traffic cars. So instead of putting out 4 traffic cars, we put out 8. And we'd looked at the patterns of crime because the crime didn't happen on a Friday and Saturday night. Not the crime we were looking for, because we were looking for high-value stolen cars. So the pattern was that it happened on Sundays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You know, when people were either getting ready to go to work or at work, and everything was quieter and more people were sleeping soundly. And it always happened from about 2:30 through to 5. After that, it always tailed off. So we went out and we started looking for these people at these times. And what a week we had. We had more than 3 car chases every night. We broke records. I personally got 91 in a 30 limit, immortalised on a speed camera. We broke a guy's jaw in front of the night shift superintendent, who turned out to be 15, which was a bit of a whoops, but hey, it happened. But more importantly, we locked up 15, 18 people for theft of motor vehicle, and we recovered 38 stolen cars, leading to more than £300,000 worth of cars being recovered. And at the end of the week, after I was going off a night shift, I had a message when I went in on the Monday morning, ready to finish up for my days off. I had a message saying I was to stay on and speak to the superintendent, and I thought, fuck, here we go. Because not only had we recovered all those stolen cars and had great fun, we'd wrecked 3 traffic cars that week. But, so the superintendent came in, and he goes, come in, John, come in. And I comes in, stands to attention in front of his desk, and he's going, fucking good work, mate, good work. Now go home and get some sleep. And I'm like, right, okay, excellent. And that's high praise coming from the super. 2 weeks later, that superintendent got moved. 2 weeks after that, we got an inspector on the shift. 2 weeks after that, I get moved. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Yeah. Anyway, let's look at the patterns that we've got here, because I think this is a crystal clear pattern. This isn't accidental. This isn't systematic. Look at the timeline. 2022, Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act. 2023, Online Safety Act. 2023, Public Order Act. 2024, Summer Riots. Mass social media prosecutions. And they weren't even really prosecutions. They were arrests, and then people were persuaded, I think, coerced even, to plead guilty. 2025, new Internet Intelligence Unit created. That's not random legislation. There's no need for any of these legislations to have been put in place, because we had perfectly serviceable laws that covered everything that these ones cover. No need at all. But it's a coordinated campaign of being able to clamp down harder, faster, and with impunity. Who do you think's driving the change then? Because, you know, there are many, many factors when it comes to creating laws. Is it society that's calling out for it? Have we driven the change ourselves? Is government wanting to do it? What would it be? So, public demand for safer social media? I don't know. Is there a public demand for safer social media? I've not seen any, but then again, I don't spend a lot of time on social media, believe it or not. Yes, on Twitter, but usually in the mornings catching up on stuff, and then I kind of dip in and out during the day. I'm never on any of the other stuff. I'm never on TikTok or Facebook or anything like that. And when I'm on YouTube, I'm looking at things that interest me. I'm not looking at news and stuff like that. Does the government want more control? Do police forces and their stats department want easier arrest? Or is it all of the above? Now, remember, I've worked within this system, in both as a frontline cop and as behind the scenes. And I'll tell you how it really works. When politicians want the police to focus on something, they don't send an order down saying, ignore real crime, do this instead. What they do is they create new laws that are easier to enforce than investigating actual criminals. That's kind of self-perpetuating, because if you think about it, investigating a housebreaking or an assault or a murder even requires everything: forensics, witness statements, CCTV analysis, sometimes weeks of work. You're going to investigate the murder anyway. That was a bad analogy, that one. Arresting someone for a Twitter post, screenshot, bang, you're done, mate. Screenshot, arrest, job done. Which one looks better in the statistics? Which one's easier to achieve? Which one gives you a quicker clear-up rate and a higher score? Yeah, the easy one. It's like I was saying about going out in the night shift, and instead of targeting speeders, we targeted bad people that were stealing your cars. But most other cops would just go out and do speeders because they got the numbers in. Because, yeah, we were asked to do a certain amount of cases every month as a traffic cop. We get asked to do 30 cases a month. It's not a lot. But you could get all your cases in the night shift just by sitting with a radar gun and doing the odd speeder. Really, are these people hurting anyone? They're doing it at 4 o'clock when the schools are coming out, fine. But no, they're in the middle of nowhere speeding, and you're targeting them for speeding. When else are they going to do it? So that's what happens when you get pressure from above. And they do weird things as well with statistics, because they'll change the statistics so that technically breaking into a shed should be a housebreaking, well, at least in Scotland, but they change it so as it becomes opening a lock-fast place. So it doesn't go down as a housebreaking, which is so it goes down as an opening lock-fast place, which is a lesser crime than a housebreaking. So the stats look better. When you're told when you go to a broken window, you have to judge whether the glass fell in or out. Because if the glass fell out, it was probably caused accidentally by the occupants, and rather than someone trying to break in. And bang, they don't get their insurance, and you don't have to put in a police report, and the stats look better. That's how policing worked. That's how it worked then. It probably still works like that to a degree now. So there was always pressure for good clear-up rates, and some sergeants, some inspectors would encourage their officers to focus on the easy wins. Some superintendents would encourage their division to focus on the easy wins. So minor offences that are quick to process, it's always bullshit then, and it's industrial scale bullshit now, isn't it? Because that's what these guys are doing. They're focusing on the easy wins. You don't need to spend a lot of time sending cops out to investigate stuff if you can just trawl through social media. Bang, bang, bang. Done. Right, and now we get to the part, and this might surprise me, right? Because remember, we're talking about actual figures here. This surprised me, especially when it comes to this oft-used phrase, two-tier policing, which I think in this case seems to be an actual thing. Keir Starmer says it's a non-issue. Really? Let's look at the numbers. And we'll look at plasticine action here, right? 890 people were arrested in a single day. 890 for holding placards saying stop genocide. 890 people. Now, I'm no fan of plasticine action. I'm no fan of protesting against things that you really can't have any effect on. I am a fan of protesting against things that interfere with our life in our country. And one of them is Tommy Robinson, and he attracts thousands of supporters, and he targets things that affect life in our country. And typically on his marches, you get between 4 and 6 people arrested. That's the numbers. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Sometimes maybe as many as 10. But plasticine action, and remember, what did the government do? They made them a prescribed organisation. So suddenly, boom, you can target them willy-nilly. And you might think, judging by Twitter, that nobody's touching them. But they arrested 890 of them in one day. And every one of them is going to be processed through the courts. So, I'm not defending Tommy. I'm not defending plasticine action. But these numbers don't add up. They really don't. It's purely down to what's easier to hit. And that's unequal treatment, isn't it? Because Tommy Robinson's organisation isn't a prescribed terrorist organisation. And he doesn't get anywhere near as many arrests as the other one who has been and is. Interesting, isn't it? Kind of shows you how little the government need to do in order to sway the direction of the police like that. They go from, we're going to have these far-right people, to the next thing, boom, we'll lift all these guys because they're all supporting a prescribed organisation. And we'll get huge numbers. Yeah? Oh. So, from football matches to political rallies, the golden rule was always proportionality and consistency. Same offence, same response, regardless of who or what you believed, because it's not up to you. If the person steps out of line, they should get arrested. It doesn't matter what team they support, whether it's green or blue. And the same thing applies in protest, whether it's Catholic or Protestant. It doesn't matter if you step out of line, you get lifted. And that was always the way that we were taught to apply it. It doesn't seem to be happening now, does it? And when you see patterns this obvious, you've got to ask yourself who benefits. Who benefits? So who benefits from a population that's afraid to speak their minds? Who benefits from protesters being terrified of 14-year prison sentences? Who benefits from police resources being diverted from protecting the public to monitoring social media? Isn't you, isn't me. So who benefits? Well, it's a control mechanism, isn't it? The government benefit. And let's have a look at some conspiracy theories. And, you know, we have investigated conspiracy theories, and some turned out to be true, didn't they? You know the ones I mean. But let's separate, as we said, the wheat from the bullshit. So, George Soros. George Soros is funding all these guys. If it was a drinking game, don't drink every time someone mentions Soros because you'd die of alcohol poisoning. So, remember we went through all the think tanks and the funding streams, and yes, George Soros is applying pressure to this country. But it's not by directly funding people on streets like this, because he doesn't need to. His funding doesn't need to do that. I know, it's a good question, Julian. I think it might be the Emperor Palpatine. So there's no evidence that his actual organisations fund protests. There's no money trail. But and people are going to say, but if he was funding them, he'd hide the money. Yeah, but people have funding streams, and let's be quite clear: the people that put up 7 miles of flags in Birmingham done a great job. Who funded them? 7 miles of flags isn't cheap. Who funded them? Well, we can tell you exactly who funded them. They set up what's it called? What are these aid things called? They set up one of those, and they explicitly said it would the money raised would be to buy flags and cable ties, and they got over £21,000 at the last look. So that's interesting. And that's a funding stream that you can look at. GoFundMe, that kind of thing. Exactly, beats and tapes. But we're not finding anything for the plasticine action guys. But someone is funding them. Because you don't get all those placards handed out from backs of vans. They don't come from nowhere. So they're probably being funded by the Labour think tanks. You know? Why wouldn't they? Like the Fabian Society. Why wouldn't they? Of course. Or would they? Because whose side are these plasticine action on? I don't know. Are they being funded by... They could be funded by security services. They could be being funded by... No, I can't say it. I can't say it. Could it be a false flag going the other way? Try and piss people off? I don't know. Anyway. Right. Anyway. So what's documented? And this is where we're talking about proper figures and proper documentation. The government has spent over 1.3 billion annually on digital surveillance capabilities. 1.3 billion every year. They've created specialised units to monitor social media. They've passed laws giving them unprecedented powers to prosecute online speech. And I made a tweet today that said, stop blaming Labour and stop criticising Labour. Criticise the government, because this has been going on for well over a decade. So this isn't a Tory Labour thing. This is a government thing. Doesn't matter what party's in power, they're all going to be doing this. And if you vote in reform, nothing's going to change. They're going to do exactly the same thing. Mark my words. You don't need shadowy puppet masters when the conspiracy is happening in broad daylight with official government press releases. So what's scarier, imaginary puppet masters or a real government that's surveilling you? Because one of those is actually happening. This is the most surveilled country in the world, I think. This is like Person of Interest on speed. If you haven't seen Person of Interest, it's worth a watch. It was a TV series about surveillance and how it could be manipulated. And most of the biggest conspiracies are the ones hiding in plain sight. Politicians don't need secret meetings and smoke-filled rooms when they can just pass laws and hold press conferences. Look what they did. Look what they did when they wanted to keep you in your homes for the lockdowns. You'd think that was orchestrated by someone other than governments working in concert. They changed the fucking UN playbook on how to deal with a pandemic with our pressure. Because the original playbook said you do not isolate countries, you don't stop travel, because you can't stop it spreading. And then they tell you to stay in your house. That's nuts. That's just nuts. Absolutely nuts. This, and again, YouTube, we're on evidence. We're just basing this on evidence and published documentation, because the UN playbook went from one very sensible approach to another untested and completely unverified approach. Stay 2 meters apart. Made up figure. Drink 2 litres of water a day to remain healthy. Made up figure. These mean nothing. There's no scientific basis behind them. There's no testing. There's nothing. Cover your orifices. I won't say any more. So the UK police are making 33 arrests daily. As of 2023, it's probably higher now, for social media posts, while solving only 11% of traditional crimes. That's not opinion. That's government statistics. It's not me making up theories and numbers out of thin air. That's government statistics. The laws are real. The arrests that they're making are real. The prosecutions are surprisingly, or the convictions are surprisingly pitiful, which means these are not valid arrests. These people shouldn't be getting arrested. They should be suing the police at every opportunity. The shift from crime fighting to thought policing is documented and undeniable. So after I spent 20 years believing I was serving the public, I genuinely thought we were the good guys. I thought catching bad guys, protecting people, I thought that was what we were doing. Maybe we were once, but not any longer. Not any longer. And what we spoke about tonight isn't policing, it's political enforcement. And as someone that took an oath to serve the public to the Queen, who's now deceased, and therefore I feel released from my oath, that does make my blood boil. Because it's wrong. It's completely and utterly wrong, and you are being shafted by your government at every opportunity in every way possible. So what can you do? What can you do? I don't know. Share, evangelize, spread the word. The information I've given you comes from official sources. I'll be putting all the detail up on sergeantgrumpy.com. I filled it up again today, so this will be up tomorrow. You'll get the resources. You can do your own look. The OS intelligence report, open source intelligence report, will be placed on Sergeant Grumpy's files. And you can dig away in it, because it gives you more than I've said tonight. Because I don't like to bore you for too long. When you see disproportionate police responses to speech while real crimes go unsolved, call it out. Call it out in every way you can. If you're there in person, call it out. If you're seeing it online, call it out, because it's just not freaking right. It needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be hammered down. I left all these things on tonight, didn't I? Remember, the most powerful weapon against authoritarianism isn't violence, it's mockery. Because they can't take it. They can arrest you for calling someone a Muppet, but they can't arrest logic and evidence. And the thing is, most revolutions that succeed don't use violence, strangely enough. Right, yeah, there are too many incidents, Shalini, you're right, but, you know, you can't let your guard down. You got to keep plugging away. You got to keep plugging away. Just like, you ever see me playing Fortnite? Cheating reported. Cheating reported. That's water, Shalini. I'm on day 3 of my water fast. That's now 75 hours since I last had food past these lips. So there you go. Obviously had an effect on my speech, but I think my mind is still clear. So, I think that's it. I think that's everything for tonight. Stay grumpy, stay skeptical. Remember, truth doesn't need laws to respect it, and it doesn't need laws to protect it from criticism. Remember, in a world full of sheep, it pays to be the one that asks, where are we going? It's been great for you